Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Grayzone. It's been a while, and things have gotten significantly worse since we last saw you. Anyway, as you can see, I'm in somewhat of a new studio. I got kicked out of my old studio by a new male roommate who's like a month old. So yeah, I'm down in the Grayzone man cave, and taking me a minute to get the shot right. So yeah, we were a little bit late, but I think it'll be worth the wait. We're going to cover a lot today. The aftermath of the Gaza genocide, or interregnum between genocides. I mean, it's sort of a continuous genocide. What's happening in the West Bank? Trying to explain, I think, where the next phase is going to go there, and a war on Venezuela seems to be looming as Marco Rubio's deadly Gusano games deepen. And then I think it's impossible to avoid the Mamdani meltdown. I mean, this is an internationally significant event, even though it's a municipal election in which many normal New Yorkers are just going out, voting, and not having the same thoughts about it as Bill Ackman, for example. But this is a nationally significant election. The Republicans are sort of trying to make it a referendum. And I think it has international significance because it's a repudiation of Zionist control. And that is not to endorse Zohran Mamdani and everything that he represents, and to portray him as some sort of socialist messiah, but it's highly significant. And I'm just really enjoying the meltdown. But Aaron, how are you doing?
I'm well. Good to see you, Max. Good to see everybody here. Remember to like the stream if you're so inclined. And thanks for your patience, both in waiting however many weeks it took for us to do these, and also in a little bit in our delayed start time, which owes to our ever-evolving technical capabilities. And the new studio, Max, looks great. And I hope to join you soon in the new studio realm. I'm working on that.
Well, the bookshelf looks good. I didn't mean to denigrate your bookshelf. It's a good, wholesome, to paraphrase Richard Nixon's Checkers speech, it's a good, wholesome Grayzone bookshelf.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
we can start. I think we can start with we've missed some of the Gaza developments in which J.D. Vance has been sent as the babysitter to basically control Netanyahu without exerting any leverage, and to be submitted to various ritual humiliations. I guess J.D. Vance didn't kiss the wall this time, but he was sent to Israel to suffer various humiliations. And this is after Trump's signature 2025 peace initiative, which was intended to get him the Nobel Prize, and I think will go pretty much nowhere. As I explained in a mono we have up at the Grayzone's YouTube channel and all our social media channels, Israel has been violating the ceasefire flagrantly, throwing it in Trump's face, starting with false claims that Al-Qassam Brigade's battalion attacked Israeli troops in Rafah, which is a completely depopulated, destroyed area in which the Al-Qassam Brigades and Hamas actually has no presence because Israel's occupying it. They use that as the pretext to bomb Gaza City, killing scores of people. And they have continued to kill people inside the Gaza Strip. And we've seen how many times Israel's violated the ceasefire in Lebanon, over 1,000 times. And historically, Israel's violated virtually every ceasefire and armistice since 1949. So J.D. Vance is first sent to sort of manage this supposed peace initiative And I think he was humiliated in various ways, starting with this press conference with Netanyahu.
Is becoming some kind of vassal state or protectorate of the United States, not only advising it what to do, but also commanding what to do. Why do you both comment on that? And
Why do we have an
also
echo?
comment on, will you?
We have an echo?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's...
Are you sharing as the same time as I am?
Maybe that's what's happening.
All right. Well, I'm going to...
Okay, I'll share it.
Now, Prime Minister, Turkish security personnel to get inside Gaza?
Well, I want to put it very clearly. You know, 1 week they say that Israel controls the United States. A week later they say the United States controls Israel. This is hogwash. We have a partnership, an alliance of partners who share common values, common goals. We can have discussions, we can have disagreements here and there, but on the whole, I have to say that in the past year we've had agreement, not only on goals, but how to reach them. And I think we're pursuing them successfully. We've been able to do two things. Put the knife at Hamas's throat. That was the military.
So yeah, we're just partners. You can see what Netanyahu is doing. Like JD Vance is supposed to be representing the America First constituency, which is now wise to the fact that Israel has complete control over the Trump administration. And so he's convoluting the issue. Israel, 1 week they say we're the client state. The next week they say the US is the client state. It's all crazy. We're just perfect partners. And JD Vance knows the reality, but he can't say anything. And so he's basically a prop for Netanyahu to flaunt the reality, where it's Netanyahu who's there to determine the relationship. And then as JD Vance is in Israel, the Knesset, which is under the control of religious nationalist Greater Israel elements, the real voice of Israeli society, of Jewish Israeli society, votes to annex the West Bank, which would formalize apartheid, something Israel would be proud to do. And JD Vance has to now grapple with the reality that Israel wants all the land.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll do. Yeah.
The West Bank vote yesterday that took.
Oh yeah, that was just kind of weird.
Oh yeah, that was weird. That was weird. I was sort of confused by that. Now I actually asked somebody about it, and they told me that it was a symbolic vote, some symbolic vote to recognize, or a symbolic vote to annex the West Bank. I mean, what I would say to that is when I asked about it, somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no practical significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The policy of the Trump administration actually is that Israel can steal whatever West Bank land it wants. It just can't call it annexation. It's a distinction without a difference. And Trump's like peace plan, the one he pushed in 2020, it says openly that, you know, any peace agreement will have to take into account the new demographic realities, which basically says Israel's stolen all the West Bank land that it wants. It's put the illegal colony settlements there, and it can keep those. So his like mock outrage here, or mock offense, is so disingenuous because he does support Israeli annexation, just not Israel saying they're going to take every single inch of land in the West Bank. By the way, Israel does this all the time with visiting U.S. politicians. They did this to Blinken. They did this to Biden when he was vice president. When U.S. politicians come, they actually do similar measures where they, you know, about expanding settlements, or in this case, declaring the intent to annex all of the West Bank. And going back to Netanyahu when he talks about, you know, they're being partners. Well, I do wonder, what have they agreed on that we don't know about? Because, like the common narrative is that Trump ordered Netanyahu to stand down in Gaza because he really wanted just finally this genocide to end. But what did they agree to that we don't know about? And it has to be, I think, my best guess is another round with Iran. That Netanyahu has gotten Trump's blessing for that, because I just don't see Netanyahu deciding to give up on the genocide just because Donald Trump tells him to. If it's Netanyahu, he wants to get something out of it. So when he talks there about a partnership, I actually think there's some truth to that, and that he's gotten something from Trump that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, I had that same thought. It could also be support for another military campaign in Lebanon, for the U.S. to demand and push for Hezbollah to give up its weapons. And I remember when Obama signed the JCPOA and Israel was sort of forced to stand down on that, he provided for the first time the GBU weapons that Israel had been demanding, supposedly to attack Iranian nuclear sites, but they were never going to be able to do that. And it was ultimately to destroy entire city blocks in Gaza. Obama provided Israel with GBUs, 2,000-pound, even larger bombs to mollify them. He delivered the largest weapons package, and he increased the annual aid package to, I think, the annual loan package to like $4 billion as a way of just mollifying Netanyahu so they wouldn't sabotage him, or who knows what else they could have done to him. So that would make total sense to me. And at the same time, Netanyahu's under enormous pressure to shatter the ceasefire. Ben-Gvir has called for the ceasefire to be broken. Now that the hostages, the so-called hostages, the captives are returned, that Hamas has given up much of its leverage. Bezalel Smotrich was on stage at a religious nationalist event holding a Torah scroll demanding Jewish settlement in Gaza. It's not over for them. And Netanyahu has said explicitly in Hebrew, because that's where he often tells the truth, although he never gives interviews to Hebrew language interviewers, that not only Trump, but also Biden gave him all the weapons he needs to go back in and reignite the war if necessary. So as far as war with Iran goes, that's unclear to me, because Israel cannot extricate itself from another conflict with Iran without the U.S. directly participating. So Trump will have had to have committed U.S. involvement, and deeper U.S. involvement, because it's going to be a more violent and bloody war. And now there are U.S. troops in Gaza, effectively, or at least in and around Gaza. There's a de facto U.S. military base where the U.S. is supposedly monitoring the ceasefire. That's highly unusual. The U.S. is taking gradual steps towards the Gaza Riviera. That's what this looks like to me, under cover of monitoring and enforcing a ceasefire, which should be done with multinational troops. I don't know if we have that footage.
Yeah, well, footage of the troops in at Abu. So these are U.S. forces in Gaza.
Yeah, and so Marco Rubio was sent as the next babysitter as soon as J.D. Vance leaves. And Marco Rubio was just there. Remember, he was kissing the wall. He was wearing a kippah at the wall. Very unusual display. Next thing you know, he's back, and he's there to manage this strange U.S. force of several hundred troops.
And the command post of that is inside Israel.
Yes.
It's not like some neutral state. It's like literally inside of Israel, and that's the command center of everything. And then you have the investor, as J.D. Vance labeled Jared Kushner, overseeing the master plan. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were recently interviewed by Barry Weiss's CBS News, and they talked about the master plan.
Well, wait, before you play it, I mean, this is fascinating, because this is the most significant clip in this interview, which was a very valuable interview. And it was placed in 60 Minutes overtime because it was the most revealing clip, I have to assume, in which Jared Kushner, just watch the look on his face when Steve Witkoff mentions the master plan is very telling.
You're not supposed to reveal the master plan.
He actually says master. It's like when George H.W. Bush said, "We are implementing a new world order."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Part of the plan is the reconstruction, the building, rebuilding of Gaza. And you're builders, you've been in real estate. As you said, it's extremely complex. Tell us more about the plan and how much it's going to cost, where's the money going to come from, and who's going to award the contracts? 3 questions.
I think it's going to cost a lot of money.
What's a lot of money?
You know, the estimates are in the $50 billion range. It might be a little bit less. It might be a little bit more. I happen to think that that's not a lot of money in that region. You have governments that are going to jump on in, and
So the Middle East countries are going to provide the money.
What you'll see European participation and so forth. I think the beginning of this plan is how to get it going, and that's what me and Jared work on all the time. The money raising we think is the easy part. We think that happens relatively quickly, but it's the master plan, and we're working with a group of people who have been working on master plans for the last 2 years.
So there are plans already.
We have plans already. We have a master plan already. And by the way, and Jared's been pushing this, and we're working together on it. And
Look at Jared.
Yeah, let's pause on Jared's face here.
There's a master plan. There's a I could hear old Public Enemy sampling that, like the Bomb Squad sampling. There's a master plan. There's a master plan.
Well, they're just confirming like every possible Jewish stereotype here. It's like
Except the good ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it really should be called the master race plan, because that's what they're trying to impose on the people of Palestine. Is these 2 North American Jews and their Jewish supremacy. And Jared Kushner, look who made him even. He's not even an official in the government. He's just Donald Trump's son-in-law. At least in the first term, he had a title. He doesn't even have a title anymore. He's supposed to be out of government, but now all of a sudden, he's just the new viceroy of Gaza. He's the investor, as J.D. Vance called him, or as Steve Witkoff calls him, the guy, with the master plan.
Well, he runs a venture capital firm, and he taps into the sovereign wealth funds of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. So that could be where Witkoff's Middle Eastern money is coming from, which he refers to. And his venture capital firm is invested in real estate companies which have eyes on the prize in the Gaza Strip, building seafront realty. So he actually has mentioned publicly that Gaza has great real estate potential, and that's part of the master plan. And Gaza and Kushner recently addressed the master plan.
Yes, he explained what the master plan entails, fittingly speaking from Israel.
Reconstruction aid, no reconstruction aid, no reconstruction funds will be going into areas that Hamas still controls. And as far as the demilitarization goes, once the ISF is up, there needs to be a security force that they can feel safe from, that in order for it to be the transition to be complete. So that needs to happen.
So in case people couldn't hear that because the volume's a little low, he says at the beginning, no reconstruction money will be going into the parts of Gaza that Hamas controls, which is about half of Gaza.
Yeah.
So that's the master
53% to be sure. And I'll throw up this graphic. It spells out the plan, part of the master plan pretty well. And so you can see here pretty clearly the white area is where almost the entire population in the Gaza Strip has been confined to. During the war, they were pushed mostly towards Al-Mawasi, towards the south, right directly along the Mediterranean Sea. That's where 600,000 people were forced into tents. And then if you move further up the coast, you get to Deir al-Balah and the Nusayrat refugee camp. Those areas were not as comprehensively destroyed as the area you see in green all the way at the bottom, which is Rafah, which has been completely destroyed. And then Gaza City, Israel was in the process of destroying that area in the north, and then Beit Hanun in the north in the green, and much of Jabalia camp have been destroyed. So those areas are off limits. And what Israel's aiming to do along the so-called yellow line between the white area and the green area is impose a kill zone. And they've been killing people who've been trying to come home, get their belongings in the green areas. And at the same time, they are imposing a series of death squads through collaborators, one of whom is very well known because he managed to become a Wall Street Journal and Free Press contributor, Yasser Abu Shabab, who previously was an ISIS collaborator or an ISIS ally inside Gaza, who's been disowned by the Abu Shabab clan. He's a drug dealer. He's a smuggler. And all of these gangsters that you see on this screen were stealing all the goods that were coming into Gaza in order to justify Israel blocking aid. And then they were reselling it back to the population at inflated prices, which is one reason why you're seeing executions inside the white area of their soldiers and their men, the collaborators who made everyone's lives miserable. And Aaron, I mean, if you understand how the Syrian dirty war functioned, then you can understand what Israel's plan is here under the master plan with these four major collaborator gangs. And there will be more gangs that they're seeking to recruit. And it's to weaponize them, have them hold territory, create these supposed model cities, as Jared Kushner mentioned, where reconstruction will be allowed to take place under the watch of the collaborator death squads, whereas everybody else is living in misery. And then to say, oh, Hamas is failing, but look at the gleaming Emirates-sponsored cities that these wonderful moderates, the Arab moderates like Yasser Abu Shabab are managing. And they're getting like tons of promotion from the Atlantic Council and all of these other Israel lobby-sponsored front groups that have Palestinian collaborator PR men working for them. And then gradually they're going to push towards civil war and have Palestinians kill other Palestinians in a replay of the 2006 failed coup. And that's their plan for destroying Hamas. And then the master plan comes in. We talked about this in January. The Boston Consulting Group already produced the slides where then Gaza will be turned into the Gaza Riviera. But first they have to get rid of Hamas, something they failed to do in this war.
Yeah, that's the real master plan. And part of it was while letting gangs steal aid and profit off of it, they falsely accused UNRWA of being complicit in October 7th, UNRWA being the main UN aid agency for refugees in Gaza, accused it of being complicit in October 7th, accused it of mismanaging aid, and they forced it to shut down. And just last week, and things move so quickly, it's hard to keep track of all these developments. The International Court of Justice ruled that Israel had presented no evidence at all to support its assault on UNRWA, which, of course, every major Western state went along with, led by the Biden administration and then Trump. And do we even hear any more about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, right? Now that phase of the genocide is over, or at least has been suspended, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has just shut down, packed up its bags.
Yeah. What did they accomplish?
Because that was just part of the plan. The whole point, which is to destroy the existing aid system, to justify to enable a Israeli siege and help empower the gangs that Israel is using to control Gaza and promote, as you said, a civil war.
Yeah, so I think part of the master plan is to inspire a dirty war. Israeli intelligence will provide all of the logistics on the ground, in which they actually did in the Golan Heights, in the Golan during the Syrian dirty war, working directly with Al-Qaeda. They have years and years of experience in this, going back to the Lebanese civil war, working through the Phalangist militia, which carried out the Sabra and Shatila massacre, by the way, during a ceasefire. So this is part of the Israeli playbook. And I think the Palestinian collaborators will lose. They've lost again and again, and the Palestinian population will reject them because I think they understand and are politically sophisticated enough to understand. And a guy with a leaf blower just showed up.
Initially, Trump seemed to signal that he understood that Hamas was going after collaborators, but then I think he was told that these collaborators were like working with Israel, and then all of a sudden he threatened to go in and attack Hamas himself. He said, like, I'll go in if I have to, after being reminded that the collaborators that Hamas was going after were actually Israeli collaborators. He realized he was on their side, but initially he was like, yeah, they're taking care of some bad guys. It happens, you know. Some people were saying that like these collaborators should be tried in a court of law. Like, okay, in what court of law? Like, Israel destroyed everything in Gaza. All the universities are destroyed. The courts are destroyed. Like, where are you supposed to have a trial? This is what happens when you when you destroy an entire society, is you have chaos like this, and you have fighting, and you have scores to settle.
Yeah, well, this is where the future leadership of Hamas will come from. I believe it's called the Saham Brigade, the Shadow Brigade. This is one of the most important elements of Hamas right now. They're sort of undercover, and they're flushing out the collaborators. And it's actually popular because people understand how collaborators have wrecked their lives over not just the last 2 years, but over the decades. How they provide intelligence that allows Israel to bomb entire families, how they sell out communities, and they're often manipulated themselves, either with cash or there's blackmail on them. Israel's Unit 8200 does an excellent job of ruining the lives of Palestinians and tapping their phones, finding any possible means of blackmailing them with personal dirt in order to turn them to the other side. Actually, when you leave the Gaza Strip in Beit Hanun, there's a mural with graffiti warning or basically appealing to Palestinians not to collaborate, not to inform, because it does so much social damage. Anyone who's in like a targeted community in the US knows how damaging snitching can be. So this is popular. Yahya Sinwar himself was the leader of one of the first counterintelligence battalions of Hamas in the Gaza Strip and went to jail for life in Israeli prisons for 25 years because he personally oversaw the hunting and killing of 2 Palestinian collaborators. And that helped him, obviously, through 25 years of prison also, it helped him ascend to a leadership position. And I think the future leadership will come through this next struggle, this next phase in which Hamas will be tested from within. But it's not really testing Hamas per se as an Islamic organization. It's not testing it ideologically necessarily. It's testing it purely as a resistance organization. And other resistance organizations will join them in working to defeat the Israeli-backed collaborator forces. And if they fail and they lose, the next phase of the master plan comes in, which is what they call voluntary migration, ethnic cleansing, then building Jared Kushner's luxury colonies.
Yeah, Trump has recently talked about how there's all this land in the region. He said there's land in Egypt, there's land in Jordan, and that's where he wants Palestinians to go and live. So he's not dropping his vision, which is ethnic cleansing, which is exactly what Israel wants too. And they amazingly weren't able to achieve in 2 years of genocide. I personally thought they would. But the Palestinian people, it speaks to their resilience that people, even amidst rubble, just refuse to leave. They refuse to be chased out of their homeland.
In many cases, they have nowhere else to go. But there is a resilience there that I don't think people on the outside understand, as well as a level of political education that you just don't see elsewhere. And you definitely don't see that level of political education from the key figures who propagandized for this genocide within the Biden administration.
Yes, well, this is a tough clip to watch, but it speaks to the mentality of the Democrats, especially the Biden administration veterans who refuse to own up to anything that they did. Karine Jean-Pierre, who was not a very important figure in the Biden administration, she was just the press secretary, where her job is to just spin the media and deliver scripted lines. But listen to how she was. Listen how she handles being asked about does she regret defending the Biden administration's support for genocide. We're not going to watch the whole clip, just the most, I think, revealing part. I'm going to,
because I want to get. We got a few more things.
But of course not. Of course not. And you know, I hope that we get to a place where we can get to a peace agreement in the Middle East. And I know that's going to be incredibly tough to make that happen.
Now that you are speaking for yourself, Karine, do you have any regrets at all for anything that you said while you were speaking on behalf of this administration?
Look.
It's just it's a simple yes or no. You don't even
No, because you're asking for a yes or no question. I want to put some context to it too. I woke up every day. I woke up every day very proud to be the White House press secretary. I woke up every day as a Black woman who is queer, who no one had ever seen someone like me at that podium standing behind that lectern. It was an honor and a privilege to have that job. And I did it to the best of my abilities. And I spoke for the President of the United States, a person that I believe was a decent person. We did not get everything right. No one is saying we got everything right. No one is saying that we got everything right. No one is saying that. But we did it to our best of our abilities, and I worked very hard to do that job. And so I want to put it into context. And as you know, at the podium, you don't do yes or no question answers.
No, we were hoping you would now that you are speaking for yourself and you're not at the podium.
I was very proud. I was very proud of everything that I did. So I don't take anything back. I was really proud of everything that I did. Again, we didn't get everything right.
All right, Karine Jean-Pierre, thank you.
I mean, she was the person who called demands for a ceasefire disgraceful. That's one of the greatest hits of Karine Jean-Pierre. This was back in 2020, like right after the genocide began. She said calls for a ceasefire are repugnant and disgraceful, and she doesn't take that back. And her only answer is, I'm a Black queer woman. That's basically all she can say. I'm a Black queer woman, so therefore it's
she
fine.
Woke up every day as a Black queer woman.
Yeah.
We don't know how she went to bed. Well, isn't that so telling of what that class of political operatives is? That they just weaponize their identity in order to reinforce the most progressive iterations of establishment politics. And isn't that really, if you distill what liberalism has become in the US down to its toxic essence, what liberalism is, which is a thin veneer of rainbow identity masking this genocidal Death Star, actually using identity to justify genocide in the name of careerism.
Yes, and not just genocide, but ethno-supremacist genocide. So identitarian genocide, because it's committed by a Jewish supremacist state. So you're going to use progressive talking points and progressive values, Black and queer, to propagandize ultimately on behalf of a foreign white ethno state. That's what she's doing. And it's weird. She's someone who she has a progressive background. She used to work with Haiti
Liberté. She did.
Yeah, which is like a really anti-imperialist group focused on Haiti. And she previously was critical of Israel. And all once you get into power, all that's out the window.
Yeah.
To the point where even now she still can't even express any regret.
She's sort of, her and Van Jones should team up and write a book on like the habits of highly effective sellouts or something. Like they both kind of had dipped their toes in very radical circles and wound up on the other side. But, she couldn't even get as far as Matthew Miller the State Department spokesman, Smirkula, who actually said, well, I was actually providing cover for war crimes, but that was my job.
Yeah.
Because she wants to be in the administration. Again, these people are always walking through the revolving door and they can never give up. That's why Kamala Harris actually has entertained hopes of running again. Someone she never won a single delegate and rode the coattails of Joe Biden's dementia-addled campaign to become vice president and then the nominee. And now she's entertaining the fantasy that she is somehow going to become president. And Karine Jean-Pierre probably thinks she'll be in some high-level position in the White House, like some kind of, in some comms position. So she has to demonstrate total loyalty because that's what matters in Washington. And that means no reflection on the Holocaust of our time among that class of people. And they have to be held accountable for that. They're gonna come back. This crew is gonna come back in 2028. They're all going to be back and they're going to be asking for everyone's votes, and they're not going to be doing any reflection on this issue. Is everyone ready to walk away after all of what we've endured under Trump? That's the question. And, you know, we're talking about Gaza a lot. The West Bank is experiencing a full-scale settler Israeli army combined terror campaign, and the US media is just not covering it at all. I mean, it's just off the hook what's happening there with animal slaughter, the slaughter of entire sheep herds, attacks on elderly people. This U.S. journalist Jasper Nathaniel documented Israeli troops pushing journalists into a settler ambush, and he wound up documenting settlers bludgeoning an elderly woman who got a brain hemorrhage, was taken to the ICU. We have some other footage of an elderly woman being beaten. It's impossible to travel from city to city in the West Bank right now. De facto annexation is taking place. The settlers, the most violent settlers, especially in the South Hebron Hills and in the northern West Bank, they've been given ATV, all-terrain vehicles by the Israeli state so they can reach anywhere in the West Bank in order to terrorize shepherds. They've been given automatic weapons, U.S. automatic weapons. They've been deputized by the security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. The West Bank is the next target. Like when we talk about when is the next war going to come, you know, will Israel finally go back into Gaza? Will they attack southern Lebanon again? Will they attack Iran? The war is currently taking place in the West Bank, and the U.S. media is just nowhere to be found. There aren't really even any U.S. reporters in there.
So the video we're showing is a settler harassing a Palestinian man in the West Bank, and then some Israeli soldiers come up and basically help the settler abuse this man. They pin him down, they assault him. It's almost like they're working for the settlers.
They're like, Shlomo, you're doing it wrong. You have to take the arm and bend it back and slam him heel.
Yeah. I mean, and again, these settlers, like, where do they come from? They come from places like,
well, look, we did this to Greta Thunberg. You have to do this.
Yeah. They come from places like Brooklyn. They come from Canada. They come from South Africa. This is the reality of Israel right here. And this is what it's been like for decades now. Just now more of the world is aware of it, but this is always what it's been.
Yeah. I've witnessed it myself. I was in the South Hebron Hills. I'm trying to remember the name of the village. Safa. And I was with this is 2009. I was with some Palestinian farmers picking olives, and out of nowhere, like the children of the corn descend on us from these hills. It was like the hills have eyes. The children meets children of the corn meets, the Chabad mitzvah mobile. And they're just storming down the hill, all wearing white with white masks like the Ku Klux Klan, and just then rocks just start raining down everywhere. A few days later, those olive groves were completely burned, 80 trees. like historic trees that had been passed down for generations were just torched. So but what's taking place is now that with just open state sponsorship. The media is going to go into Gaza for the first time. I didn't include this element in our notes, but it's up on my Twitter feed. But Yediot Aharonot, Ynet, the Israeli tabloid, published a piece reporting that the Israeli military is meeting about what to do about the international media going into Gaza. And they're actually concerned about the level of destruction. And so they're going to pass out informational materials to the media and take them on tours with influencers and so-called experts. And we can imagine who those will be. To blame the destruction firmly on Hamas and to tell them, well, here was a tunnel and here was a terrorist family. And this is why we had to destroy. And this is the children you see being extracted from the rubble who couldn't be reached for months. Well, those are Hamas children. So this is another coming phase of the Israeli information war. And do you remember the day after Trump's Peace 2025 initiative, when all the Zionist influencers, it felt like they were instructed to mock everyone who was still horrified by what was taking place and say, why are you still horrified? Trump just made peace. There's peace. The occupation's over. What, guys, just go home.
Trump's press secretary, Levitt, she said that Trump freed Palestine.
Right.
She said Trump freed Palestine.
Palestine's free.
Yeah.
They freed 65,000 people, according to the United Nations, from being alive.
And that's a vast undercount, of course. You know, that's the official toll, but the actual toll is, of course, far, far higher. How many people who've been liberated from life by Israel and the U.S. are still buried under the rubble? We don't even know. So that's a vast undercut. But here's the article you talked about. Israel is preparing a coordinated media strategy ahead of global journalists' arrival in Gaza, including IDF escorted tours and visual evidence to show how Hamas built terror infrastructure within civilian areas and used residents as shields. By the way, I wonder on this talking point about like tunnels and stuff. First of all, a lot of those tunnels were built by Israel a while ago, right? Remember, like Ehud Barak talked about, yeah, we know where some of these tunnels are because we built them, including the tunnel that was near Al-Shifa Hospital. So I wonder even about this whole thing about the tunnels and this like 500 miles of tunnels. That to me strikes me as like a lot of Hasbara as well.
Okay, well, they're resistance tunnels. Yeah. And whenever you hear the Hasbara Brigade ask, why doesn't Hamas build bomb shelters instead of tunnels? Like, what do you think the tunnels are? I mean, who goes into the bomb shelters in Israel that actually are effective? It's Netanyahu and his fortress of Zion. He goes into a luxury tunnel in Hakiria. Bedouins, non-Jews in the Negev, they don't get any bomb shelters. The bomb shelters that are built in Israel, that's a function of Israel being a Western-backed colony. But they're building tunnels to turn siege into strategy. Does it justify blowing up entire apartment blocks? No, I mean, there's just no justification that Israel is going to cook up that's going to work at this point. And the question is, how much will does international media have to show the reality that we all know to be true, which is that there are still thousands and thousands of people buried under the rubble and stories we haven't heard yet from the Holocaust survivors.
Yeah, and also Gaza was under total Israeli siege for 2 decades. You think that if Hamas was building massive bomb shelters, Israel would have let in the material needed? Israel was blocking everything from coming in.
They were blocking concrete for sure.
Concrete. So you think if ever Hamas tried to build a bomb shelter to protect people from regular Israeli bombardments that Israel would. Oh, sure, yeah. After blocking everything one could possibly need to build an actual bomb shelter, it's just such a joke.
It's over. I mean, the PR war is over. They've lost that one. That's one of the outcomes, the most decisive outcomes, and it's never coming back. There's nothing Israel can do. There's nothing Israel can do also because of the nature of Israeli society and who they see as their allies. They see Stephen Yaxley Lenin as their ally, Tommy Robinson, anti-Muslim hooligan who came out of the fascist gangs in the UK that used to actually be anti-Semitic, and then Israel pumps a ton of money into creating the English Defense League, the EDL. Tommy Robinson emerges as one of the leaders, waving Israeli flags, menacing Muslims, and they decide he's such an ally that the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs brings him on a Hasbara tour. That's Israel today. Those are their allies. There's never going to be a Hasbara tour featuring figures who are respected in the progressive left, or even any respected figures from the center to the left in the West ever again. Israel's just so far gone, and the PR war has been completely lost. All they have left is some ability to bomb their way out of the inevitable.
There's a quote attributed to David Ben-Gurion, the founding prime minister of Israel. And I'm not sure if he actually said it, but it's attributed to him. You know, the old will die, the young will forget. And that's, I think, to the extent Israel cares or thinks anymore about global opinion, I think that's what they're counting on. People are going to move on, they'll forget. But younger generations, you know, raised on seeing, who came to political awareness, seeing shredded babies in Gaza every single day on their social media feeds before, you know, TikTok was stolen and handed over to Zionist billionaires. They're not going to forget that. And people are not going to forget what Israel is. And the face Israel projects to the public of this self-victimizing, chauvinist, supremacist state. I mean, people are just not going to forget that, because you can't, you know, Israel can't help but let you see it, because that's just who they are, and they can't hide it, no matter how much they try to whitewash themselves.
It's over. I mean, the points we've been trying to make for 15, 20 years are sinking in ways we never could have imagined, but we often don't even have to make those points. You know, I'm seeing people who are attacking you, giving you the finger a few years ago, making those points now. And getting a lot of street cred from it.
Yeah.
People who are actually even perpetuating the October 7th mass rape hoax just last year are starting to really get based on this issue. I'm not going to get in their way. I'm not shaming them. Let it happen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the mass rape hoax, it's amazing. Initially, it was so lonely to challenge that. I mean, we were doing that from the start, and Ali Abanima and Electronic Intifada were, and some others. But then now, and then some people were rushing to parrot, but now no one can stand behind that, because it's just such a absolute fraud that even now when it gets debunked, I don't even bother, you know, sharing stuff, because it's just such, even to give it a moment's attention is just kind of like, what's the point? Everyone knows it's such a fraud.
And yet, it's part of the official story. So a NHS doctor whose name is not coming to me right now was arrested at her home for giving a speech in London, I believe. Police came from far away to arrest her, and her arrest warrant included that on October 7th, Israeli citizens were raped in addition to being killed.
I think you're referring to Rahme Al-Adwan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Recently arrested, a British doctor arrested in her home
for a speech she gave.
Yeah, and this was after they tried to take away her medical license. I mean, she's just been facing consistent harassment and deplatforming attempts for speaking out for Palestine.
Yeah. Meanwhile, doctors who sold drugs for Purdue Pharma to kill millions of Americans still have their licenses. So just don't cross Miriam Adelson. All I know is that I woke up today as a heteronormative white anti-Zionist Jew. I wake up every morning and I'll go to bed that way. And I feel like we should pivot now to another insane U.S. war. Do we have the elements for Venezuela up?
I will get them up. Yes. But
okay. Well,
yeah.
Anyone who's been following the news knows that the U.S. military is preparing a war on Venezuela, a regime change war that's being sold as a new war on drugs to, in the words of Marco Rubio, stop narco terrorists from poisoning our country. And he's referring to claims that fentanyl is somehow coming to the U.S. from Venezuela, when in fact, the only thing coming out of Venezuela is cocaine, and it's only 5% of the cocaine trade to the U.S. Most of it comes from the Pacific. The fentanyl comes across the U.S.-Mexico border. The cocaine coming from the Pacific comes from the U.S. ally in Ecuador, largely, via Colombia, under the watch of President Daniel Noboa, who's the head of shipping for the Noboa company Bonita Bananas, which consistently has been shipping cocaine to Europe and to ports in the U.S. packed with cocaine in partnership with the Albanian mafia and cartels. Marco Rubio's best buddy is Daniel Noboa. So we know it's a fraud. The U.S. media hasn't, in the past few weeks, picked up on the fraud. They still refer to these attacks on boats, which are mostly heading between Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago, as attacks on cartels, and they refuse to tell the story. The New York Times finally featured one decent editorial 2 days ago about the coming war on Venezuela. The U.S. is now announcing joint military exercises with the government of Trinidad and Tobago, which may shock a lot of people, but Trinidad and Tobago is under the control of a kind of right-wing vassal administration with a president named Kamala Prasad Besessar, who comes from the Indo-Caribbean community, which is more supportive of the U.S. and has praised Trump, supported the regime change, the entire process of attacking Venezuela over the years, and is now deeply supportive of Trump's attacks on boats, even as those attacks kill Trinidadian citizens without even confirming that they're involved in the drug trade. And I really recommend everyone watching this now to watch my interview with David Abdullah, who is a Trinidadian labor leader who's been at the forefront of resisting the U.S. militarization of the Caribbean and mobilizing for Caribbean integration against this imperial assault. We cover the whole gamut of issues for an hour, and he explains how, Trinidad and Venezuela, they're only like a few miles from one another, and they have cultural ties. People travel back and forth. There is smuggling. It isn't all drug smuggling. There's also just people-to-people relationships. And the U.S. is assassinating people in boats going back and forth. But the U.S. military is now going to be just miles from Venezuela as it conducts these joint exercises. And the U.S. is sending its largest aircraft carrier now across several time zones. Is this the USS Gerald Ford?
Yep. Yep.
I always forget Gerald Ford was president, and I also think he would oppose this war. He was kind of like the last liberal Republican president. But they're sending the USS Gerald Ford. And as my friends in Venezuela are saying to me, they can't imagine the US will conduct such a gigantic show of force without coming away with some kind of bloodshed, doing something. What do we think that something will be? Well, the way that it's set up, first of all, this is all Marco Rubio's doing. I don't think Trump would have gone this far if Trump was actually in charge. What Marco Rubio first wanted to do was get the narco-terrorist designation of the Venezuelan government, the UN-recognized government, using the fake cartel of the Suns as pretext, a cartel that was created by the CIA and DEA in the 1990s, which no longer exists, claiming Nicolas Maduro and Diosdado Cabello are the heads of this cartel, and therefore placing targets on their back, putting bounties on their head, $50 million over Nicolas Maduro's head, the same sum that was placed over the head of Osama bin Laden, which means decapitation strikes targeting these figures who are political leaders who have no actual connection to any cartel will be justified as strikes on terrorists who are poisoning America. It's completely fake. And then the war could even deepen. So now we're seeing the US media, especially those parts of the US media which are being controlled by Trump Incorporated, are starting to try to mobilize and propagandize the US population to support the coming regime change war. And 60 Minutes just did a straightforward propaganda piece calling not only for regime change, but suggesting that Maduro should actually be assassinated.
So this first clip, I think we're going to hear from two actually 60 Minutes journalists.
Yeah, these are the ones who are like rapping about the amazing report that they just conducted inside Caracas in 60 Minutes overtime.
Okay.
3 ways this can go, according to a lot of the people that we spoke to, which is he packs his bags and leaves, or he's picked up. There's this big bounty for his arrest, so he could be picked up. That's number 2. Or he can meet his maker. It's not a question of if, but a question of when.
What?
So that's it. According to 60 Minutes, the only outcome in Venezuela, the only one, is regime change. It's just a question of how. Does Maduro leave voluntarily? Does he get arrested by the U.S. or does he get assassinated, which would be perfectly fine, according to 60 Minutes.
No, I mean, but he says it's not a question of if, but when, as though he has some sort of information, inside information.
Yeah.
What was the name of that? I think he's like a Cuban American. I can't remember, from Univision, who is like their star correspondent.
Where Maduro said to him, "You're not a journalist."
Take your trash, Jorge. Jorge Ramos.
Jorge Ramos.
Yeah, take your trash, Jorge. That was like a legendary exchange with Maduro, and he claimed that he was taken hostage by Maduro. And I happened to be in Caracas at that time, and was coming back on an American Airlines flight to Miami back when they had those flights. And I get on the flight, and Jorge Ramos is sitting in the front row, seat 1A in first class. I get off the flight and I come out of customs, and he's on the other side of customs giving a press conference on what a heroic figure he was and how his whole crew was taken hostage, and completely lying. And I just rolled up on him and said, do you, like, are you going to do any reporting? He did some reports showing clearly drug-addled person in Caracas fishing through trash. And honestly, like, there's a lot of poverty in Caracas, but you don't see homelessness and people eating out of the trash like you do in the US. And I said, are you going to now do any reports on Florida, where the poverty rate is rising and so on? I started challenging him, and I said, do you have any problem with Marco Rubio calling for the assassination of Nicolas Maduro? Can you condemn that now? And he refused to condemn it. And he said, Actually, Marco Rubio and Vice President Mike Pence were very happy with what I was doing. And we discussed this project before I went in. And he basically said, I am a US regime asset, and I went there on their behalf. So that's what I think 60 Minutes was doing there. And they were coordinating this with the Trump administration, which coordinated the sale of CBS News itself and 60 Minutes to the Ellisons and the takeover by Barry Weiss.
And, the Ellisons are now trying to buy CNN. And the Trump White House recently said that they want that they support that merger. They've basically weighed in on now media deals saying that, yes. And of course they do, because Barry Weiss's CBS News is now basically yet another arm of Trump Inc. They're just adopting the Trump administration's line, as this regime change propaganda on 60 Minutes illustrates. Now, it's not as if this is a radical shift for 60 Minutes. I mean, they've always been doing this, but this is an extreme level of state servitude. So, for example, before Barry Weiss took over, and this is a major reason actually why like the sale was pushed through, CBS, like 60 Minutes did a very late story on the destruction of Gaza, right? And they interviewed some U.S. officials who had resigned. And of course, it came way too late, and they held on to footage that they should have showed way earlier, but at least they did something. And that helped convince Sherry Redstone, the former owner of CBS News, to sell to the Ellisons.
Yeah. Let's go to the next 60 Minutes clip.
From the recent.
So this is from the same package that 60 Minutes produced. It's James Story, someone we know well at the Grayzone, who was the fake U.S. ambassador to Venezuela, meaning he was stationed in Bogota, and his job was to coordinate with U.S. intelligence and host all of the insurrectionist, radical Venezuelan opposition leaders to weaponize them for various coup plots. And here he is posing as a diplomat and saying the quiet part out loud to 60 Minutes.
A very bad actor sitting on top of the world's largest known reserves of oil, plus the critical minerals that will fuel the 21st century economy, and he's in bed with our strategic competitors.
And how has he been able to cling to power for as long as he has?
I mean, let's be very clear. This is a criminal organization masquerading as a government. This is an individual who is under indictment for narcotics trafficking, commits human rights violations, someone who has used the apparatus of the state to throw people in jail, to torture them, to kill them.
Wait, he's used the state to jail people? We don't do that in America. People just voluntarily go to jail. They like it there. And we don't have that many people in jail here. Just the blacks, but they don't count.
For U.S. officials to claim human rights as being something they care about has always been a joke, but especially now after 2 years of genocide at Gaza, I don't think it works the way it used to with average people, with normies. I just don't think it's, because how can you possibly even say that out loud, human rights, after you've just facilitated a genocide, which everybody saw, But yeah, at least he said, as you said, he said the quiet part out loud. Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves and also critical minerals that we want to steal. And that's what this is all about.
He's a bad actor, and he has oil. Daniel Noboa, he's a good actor who's flooding the U.S. with cocaine as the head of shipping for the company doing it. And so we're going to give him aid. Javier Milei, he's a good actor who has devalued the peso and left 20% of Argentinians unemployed. We're going to give him $40 billion in a bailout. It doesn't get more obvious than that. It doesn't get more obvious.
And barely mentioned in this, like I listened to the 60 Minutes piece. I can't remember if they even mention it, maybe in passing at best. The sanctions by the U.S. escalated by Trump massively in his first term have absolutely decimated Venezuela's economy. Even the New York Times has to admit that now after whitewashing it. Absolutely destroying Venezuela's economy made life there, difficult for a lot of people. Of course, you can't even acknowledge that. And then to the extent you talk about Venezuela's economic woes, it's all about Maduro's mismanagement. And everyone took part in this. Maduro's mismanagement of the economy. Not that we create sanctions that are designed to destroy Venezuela's economy and that have caused migration as John Bolton even admitted. John Bolton admitted after the fact, yeah, we knew that that the sanctions on Venezuela would cause migration, but we thought it was worth it because we wanted to take down their government.
So as part of this propaganda piece, the 60 Minutes crew went to a marketplace in Caracas and asked people, will you leave Venezuela if there's a war? And we remove Maduro, and they show people saying, no, I'll stay here, just to try to convince Stephen Miller, who's already on board, because it turns out he just likes torturing brown people and doesn't actually have any principles, whether it's immigration or not, to convince them that a regime change war will not fuel another wave of migration, which, I mean, 60 Minutes has always been right when they were crusading for the war in Iraq, crusading for the dirty war in Syria, which caused the largest refugee wave to Europe. They should always be trusted. The US media should always be trusted here. And I mean, look at the woman who they want to put in charge. She's the Nobel War Prize winner, Maria Corina Machado. And look at what she told Donald Trump Jr. Do you have this element? I mean, she's basically saying she's going to mass impoverish Venezuelans to enrich the people who are paying for her existence.
Forget about Saudi Arabia. Forget about the Saudis. I mean, we have more oil. I mean, infinite potential. And we're going to open markets. We're going to kick off the government from the oil sector. We are going to privatize all our industry. Venezuela has huge resources: oil, gas, minerals, land, technology. And as you said before, we have a strategic location, hours from the United States. So we're going to do this right. We know what we have to do. And American companies are in, super strategic position to invest. This country, Venezuela, is going to be the brightest opportunity for investment of American companies, of good people that are going to make a lot of money.
I mean,
really edgy content over there on Rumble, triggered with Donald Trump Jr. interviewing the Nobel Peace Prize winner. I mean, this is before she won, about how she wants to help the U.S. loot her country and steal its resources and cause even more migration. Yeah. By the way,
the Trump administration is just a straight up con right now. They're directing contracts to a drone company where Eric Trump's on the board. They brought in $1 billion in crypto revenue selling NFTs and ridiculous crypto meme coins that are essentially worthless as cover for bribery. And Maria Corina Machado, I mean, she's getting in on the grift. But one thing she doesn't understand when she points to Saudi Arabia is Saudi Arabia has Aramco, which is a state-owned oil company that funds the entire social sector of Saudi Arabia and basically pays Saudi citizens to accept the Saudi monarchy because they basically just get paid to exist there.
Yeah.
And that's what Venezuela would have been. And there would have never been waves of poor migrants after Hugo Chavez fought the managerial class in Venezuela for control of PDVSA, the state oil company. Instead, as he said, Aaron, they sanctioned Venezuela. Starting in 2015, Obama started the war to destroy the oil exports. In 2019, our colleague Anya Parampil reported on a State Department document that was actually scrubbed from the website, but she caught it before it was gone, where they boasted about all the economic damage, including lowering the standard of living inside Venezuela, a State Department document through sanctions. And now Maria Corina Machado wants to privatize everything and hand it over to Trump Incorporated after winning the Nobel Peace Prize. So this is the woman they want to put in power through force. She'll ride in on the back of a tank. And Lindsey Graham was on Sean Hannity, sort of the voice of George W. Bush era Republicanism. I can't even call it conservatism or whatever. This is a guy who used to wear a CIA pin. He took off the CIA pin for this segment because I guess it would have been just too obvious after Trump authorized the CIA to conduct lethal activities inside Venezuela. And he calls for Maria Corina Machado not to be president of Venezuela, but to be governor.
had a chat with you this weekend, and I thought you had a pretty darn good idea. And you said you were going to share it with the president. I want to know if you did. And that is this opposition leader in Venezuela that won the Nobel Prize that said it really deserved to go to Donald Trump. Sounds like a pretty good leader to me for the people of Venezuela and the end of narco-terrorism and a better relationship with the U.S. Or if they choose maybe the 51st state, I don't know.
Sounds good to me, but the opposition.
Going back to James' story for a second, where he talks about how Venezuela is in league with our strategic adversaries. Well, look, first of all, do states have the right to form alliances as they choose? I mean, that was kind of the whole point of the Ukraine proxy war, right? Like, if Ukraine wants to join NATO, they should be allowed to. We have to have a war over that. So, I mean, if Venezuela wants to be a partner with someone else, they have that right. But even putting that aside, what do you expect Venezuela to do if you've been trying to overthrow their government for more than 2 decades and you've stolen their state oil company, as Anya documents in her book, Corporate Coup, and you've put them under murderous sanctions that destroy the economy? You think they're not going to go to other places and try to have partnerships? Yeah. And what they really hate about Venezuela is the fact that Venezuela tried to use its resources not, Saudi style, where just basically like, giving its citizens a life of luxury. They've tried to help the poor majority in their country and also help countries across the global south, Cuba, Haiti, through PetroCaribe, giving them subsidized oil, and even help low-income people in the U.S. I mean, how much do U.S. elites still resent Venezuela for the program they had where they were subsidizing heating oil for low-income Americans in the winter? You just can't do that. You're not supposed to do that when you have resources. You're supposed to use your resources to enrich your local elite. And that's just intolerable for the U.S. if Venezuela was not going along with that. So therefore, they have to be destroyed. That's
sort of the point is, Venezuela, once you destroy it, you destroy an entire regional program. I mean, Trump has now sanctioned Gustavo Petro, the elected president of Colombia, because he protested the killing of Colombian citizens on the high seas on boats without any legal process whatsoever. And our friend Dan Kovalik is his lawyer. So he's in good hands with Kovalik, and Petro's speaking out. So he's sanctioned. They're going to target Lula in Brazil on behalf of Trump's ally, the Bolsonaro family. And ultimately, they would like to topple the Diaz-Canel in Cuba and install, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio's local stooges in Cuba, and topple the government of Nicaragua, the elected government of Nicaragua. Trump is mulling 100% sanctions on Nicaragua. But I thought the funniest thing about that clip was, Lindsey Graham, sounds good to me. Sounds good to me about having Venezuela's the 51st state. Is this what MAGA voted for?
Yeah.
You know how anytime like the Department of Homeland Security, like fascist Zoomers show like a clip of like Salvadorans being humiliated in the streets by ICE, there'll be hundreds of replies from MAGA saying, I voted for this. Yes, this is what I voted for. I voted for sadism. Okay, maybe that's true. You did vote for that. You're a depraved individual, but that's what you voted for. Did you actually vote for having 28 million Venezuelans become citizens of the United States? Like, I thought you didn't like that. That's not what you voted for. Now they're openly admitting it. They're flaunting it. They're just like rubbing it in your face. They have total contempt for you. Lindsey Graham is Donald Trump's top golf buddy. He's taken over Trump's foreign policy. He's running the show from Ukraine to Venezuela. And he's joking about making Venezuela the 51st state. You mean nothing. You were just conned. You were bamboozled. You were hoodwinked.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio's in charge. Remember little Marco? Trump used to run the best attack ads on Marco Rubio in 2016.
He used to say that Marco Rubio is controlled by Sheldon Adelson. And that he's a puppet of Sheldon Adelson. Well, now Trump has enlisted Marco Rubio and joined him as effectively a puppet of the Adelsons.
Yeah, I mean, it's over. MAGA was the fakest con job, and this is the proof.
And even if, Venezuela's not going to become the 51st state, as Sean Hannity was fantasizing about, I mean, did MAGA people vote for creating millions of migrants by imposing sanctions on a foreign country that we have nothing to do with? Because that's what these sanctions do, is they cause people to flee economic deprivation. That's what they're designed to do. That's the whole point of them. They wreak havoc all around the world. Do people vote for that? And that's the beauty of sanctions from like a sadistic point of view, is you can cause huge havoc in foreign countries. You can destabilize foreign countries without having to send aircraft carriers, as Trump is now doing to Venezuela. And by the way, Obama helped set the stage for all of this by declaring Venezuela to be an extraordinary national security threat.
Yep, 2015.
He declared a national security emergency, right, over Venezuela.
This is a bipartisan project. Let's not put it all on Rubio's shoulders.
Yeah. I mean, Trump has taken it to a new level, but Obama helped lay some of the groundwork by kicking off the sanctions and labeling Venezuela a national security threat to the U.S. Everyone knows that's a complete lie. Venezuela is only a threat to the U.S. and that it's not under its control. That's it.
No, I mean, I remember we were not alone, but we were not entirely respected at the Grayzone for trying to draw attention to this assault on Venezuela in every way possible. And I remember back in 2017, Jacobin was clamoring for regime change and publishing Trotskyist trash in its pages against Venezuela, against Cuba, against Nicaragua. This week, Dick Durbin, the liberal senator from Illinois, co-sponsored a resolution to declare support for Maria Corina Machado being the Nobel Peace Prize winner, along with Ruben Gallego from Arizona, another Democratic senator. I mean, the Democrats are still they're still greasing the skids for Trump's regime change war.
I mean, like, remember in Trump's first term when the fake president that Trump was trying to install in Venezuela, Juan Guaido, came to Congress, he got a standing ovation from Nancy Pelosi. And even AOC didn't feel confident speaking out against this. She said, I defer to Democratic Party leadership on Venezuela. Now, because time has passed, regime change is like, it's not as cool anymore, I guess. People feel more comfortable speaking out against it. But, and
it's Trump's war. It's Trump's partisan. Yeah. It's like the Iraq war under Bush.
And Democrats have completely lost Florida, so they're not clamoring for that vote as much as they used to. Honestly, although some people still believe they can win that vote, it's not as big of a Democratic Party priority anymore as it used to be. The exile vote in Florida.
Yeah, and soon there's going to be like the New York Zionist billionaire exile vote in Florida too.
Well,
I want to get to that in a second.
Yeah.
I need to take like a 2-minute break, so I'm gonna.
Okay.
I want to introduce viewers to one of the most important documentaries they can watch right now on this. But to segue into that, Lindsey Graham made some, I think, more revealing comments about the model for Venezuela.
We didn't have a declaration to go into Panama. Bush 41 went into Panama to replace the leadership there because the Panamanian leadership were working with drug cartels to threaten our country. Reagan didn't have a declaration of war, congressional authorization to deal with Cuban influence. So this idea of Rand Paul, I just fundamentally disagree with. To the other senators, you deserve more information and you're going to get more information. But there is no requirement for Congress to declare war before the commander-in-chief can use force. Panama and Grenada are two examples in our backyard where Republican presidents chose to go after countries and leaders that were threatening our people.
So there's so many takeaways there, but one is that he's referring to the main one is Panama and Grenada as the models for Venezuela. which is first of all delusional, because the Venezuelan military
Yes.
is not going to go down as easily as Manuel Noriega's military, which tried to put up a fight during the 1989 U.S. invasion of Panama, or the Grenadian military, when Reagan sent in the U.S. military under phony grounds of protecting U.S. students. The real reason was Grenada had elected a socialist president, Maurice Bishop, who was a nationalist, who wanted to do the same things that Hugo Chavez has done for Venezuela, use their resources and their material wealth to fund social programs and make alliances with regional neighbors, including Cuba. And he was killed. Manuel Noriega was the CIA's main point of contact under the presidency of Omar Torrijos. In the 1970s in Panama, Torrijos was a nationalist who was supportive of nationalizing the Panama Canal, and his plane went down in flames. The CIA assassinated him. Manuel Noriega comes into power, and he gets a little too big for his britches, starts sponsoring conferences with Central American leaders demanding an end to U.S. intervention in Central America, starts appointing Afro-Panamanian members of his society who were not supposed to be in power to cabinet level positions. And so he's accused of being a major drug trafficker. Same exact thing that's being done to Maduro. And he's taken away after an invasion to a U.S. federal prison.
The difference is Maduro was never a U.S. asset, unlike Noriega.
Correct.
Right. And the other difference is that Venezuela can actually fight back. First of all, it's really impressive you can recall this history and these names, which, it's been so long. I'd forgotten a lot of this history. So thank you for that reminder. My memory,
the chip is still there, right?
Yeah.
You just have to it's like those old Nintendo games where you got to be like before you put it in. Like I've been doing that recently because I just feel like the same playbook is being dusted off as well. And we have to remember, and I think one of the best reference points, Aaron, have you ever seen the Panama Deception?
I was going to mention it. If you haven't seen that documentary, it's a must see. It's so good. You learn so much from it, including you see, among other things, you see the revolving door between the Pentagon and the corporate media, because the Pentagon spokesperson at the time, it happens to be the guy also justifying, the Pentagon spokesperson is what's his name? Pete Williams, who goes on to become a legendary correspondent for NBC News. And I had no idea that he was so he's the Pentagon guy justifying the U.S. invasion of Panama, which, by the way, includes firebombing civilian neighborhoods. The U.S. literally burned civilian homes in Panama, killing untold numbers of people. And you learn that from watching the Panama Deception, which I believe is publicly available.
So I'm gonna play some of the Panama Deception, so I can take like a 2-minute break. But just to preface it, and Aaron, that was a pretty good summary. The U.S. was actually planning a wider war in the Middle East, and so Panama. Another reason for going into Panama was it was a pilot program, and they wanted to test the B-2 stealth bomber, which was recently used during Operation Midnight Hammer, the attack on Iran. And so the U.S. Air Force actually destroyed an entire civilian neighborhood in Panama City, I think was called El Chorrillo. This was largely a poor Afro-Panamanian neighborhood, and people were totally displaced. Hundreds were killed. Mass graves were discovered around Panama. Many war crimes were committed that were just simply never documented by the U.S. media, committed by the U.S. military. And a corrupt puppet government, which had a 2% approval rating under Endara, was installed into power. A neoliberal dictatorship, de facto dictatorship under democratic guise in Panama, became a hub for money laundering. So here's starting with Pete Williams. This opens with Pete Williams, who was the Pentagon spokesman who became an NBC News correspondent. And you'll see some of the destruction the U.S. caused in Panama in this model pilot program for Venezuela. And I'll be right
but to minimize damage to property, and most important of all, to minimize casualties, and that was accomplished.
My daughter did not belong to any group. She had nothing to do with Noriega. She was innocent. She had nothing to do with all of this, and they killed her.
In the months following the invasion, Panamanians were shocked to discover the existence of mass graves where hundreds, perhaps thousands of bodies were hastily dumped into pits and buried by U.S. troops.
There was a report of what some were calling a mass grave, which I think is a term that is imprecise.
No, I didn't say we had any mass burials. There was one case of some number, but I cannot quote to you that number.
To date, there have been 15 mass graves that have been identified throughout Panama. The United States military was directly responsible for the killings of the men, women, and children that are in these mass graves and for their burial. These mass graves exist throughout Panama, and some are believed to be on U.S. military bases, which creates a difficulty in terms of access to these mass graves.
Among these corpses, we found many young people, 15, 16, 18 years old. We found people in their 60s and in their 70s. We found people killed by a shot to the back of their heads, dead with their hands tied, dead with casts on their legs or arms.
Although the Pentagon insists that no more than 516 Panamanians were killed, they do concede that over 75% of those killed were civilians. Families of the victims continue to demand a full accounting of the missing and the dead.
Who has the right to determine how many people should be killed in an invasion? I think if one person got killed in an invasion that is illegal, that it violates all principles of human rights, the number of people, the quantity, the figures, if it's 10,000 or if it's one, is irrelevant. The issue that innocent people were killed. A lot of people die. Too many people die.
That's from the Panama Deception must-watch documentary if you haven't seen it. It's available online if you search for it.
And hopefully there will not be a documentary that will have to be made the day after in Venezuela, because it will be much, much worse, much more disastrous for the entire hemisphere.
And by the way, there is already a great documentary about the first U.S. coup attempt in Venezuela against Hugo Chavez in the early 2000s. Oh, yeah. The revolution will not be televised. Or it's got two titles. The revolution will not be televised, and it's called Chavez Inside the Coup. And it's a group of filmmakers who happen to be there with Hugo Chavez, just making a documentary about him when he gets regime changed with U.S. backing. And so they're there on the ground. And one of the ways the film's so illuminating is it shows the contrast between what actually happened and the way not only the U.S. media spun it, but the way the elite-owned Venezuelan media spun it and lied to their own people in a way that totally whitewashed the coup and falsely accused Chavez's government of things it didn't do. That's an amazing documentary as well.
Yeah, highly recommended. That documentary, I wouldn't say it woke me up, but it helped me better understand the situation in Venezuela. I remember when after the coup, the day after the coup, I was subscribing to the New York Times at the time, and they just celebrated it like this great democratic development and introducing the new president, Pedro Carmona. He's on the board of all of these multinational corporations. He's a great man. And then Hugo Chavez was returned to power by a popular mobilization, And the New York Times was pretty embarrassing for them. I thought it should have been as embarrassing as the WMD deception.
Well, speaking of embarrassing, I wanted to share my memory. I think you'll find this
Yeah.
funny, Max, of the Panama invasion. One of my favorite shows as a kid was the Arsenio Hall show. I loved that show.
Yeah, I missed that.
And I
that
remember,
time.
but I remember on the day when they finally kidnapped Noriega and extradited him to the U.S. And it was treated as this big victory for justice. So on the Arsenio Hall show, for those who don't know it, like he had this thing where the crowd, like the dog pound, would go woo 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 woo. So I'll never forget Arsenio coming out and saying, "We got Noriega," and the crowd was woo 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 woo, and like that was just like, I remember at the time feeling that was a bit weird because Arsenio was supposed to be like a show that was kind of counterculture a little bit.
Yeah.
But yet you could like the jingoism of that time. It's so powerful in U.S. media that even Arsenio was cheering the kidnapping of Noriega. And I've been searching for that clip because it's just funny, but I haven't been able to find it. I remember it very well.
He was a very insidious. He played an insidious role, like Oprah, like how Oprah sold the Iraq War before coming out against it. Arsenio also sold Bill Clinton to black people. It was on Arsenio where Bill Clinton played saxophone.
But he also did things like he did interview Louis Farrakhan. He did do some things that were against the grain,
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't Jimmy Kimmel and
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Those jokers.
But I'll never forget, like, we got Noriega. Woo, 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 woo.
No, I was watching the news. I mean, it was also a different time. Why the Panama deception was so important was it was like samizdat. Like, it was so hard to get alternative perspectives at that time. You had almost no way out of the Clockwork Orange style propaganda of corporate media. And I remember watching Dan Rather or Tom Brokaw, and it was just straight up. I mean, you saw Pete Williams right there, straight up Pentagon propaganda, glorifying the U.S. surrounding Noriega's residence and playing Guns N' Roses through loudspeakers to torture him into submission. There was no dissent whatsoever, except in the world of Pacifica. Michael Parenti makes a great appearance in Panama Deception, as does Ramsey Clark and a lot of other figures who kind of, set the stage for what we're doing. So yeah, turning to closer to home, to our real backyard. Venezuela is not our backyard. New York is your literal backyard. You don't actually have a backyard because you're
no, God no. Yeah, God no.
There's a commie jihad takeover underway. A communist that's the Khan Inc. right-wing GOP talking point this week, is that there's a communist jihadist takeover, as though the communists didn't battle the jihadists in Afghanistan while the Republicans supported the jihadists through the CIA. But Zohran Mamdani is intended. Well, actually, there's a great book about that by Mahmoud Mamdani called Good Muslim, Bad Muslim. But I'm getting off track. Zohran Mamdani is due to be the next New York City mayor. There's almost no question he will defeat Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa, who is said to be taking votes away from Cuomo, but I don't think so. This is just a repudiation of Cuomo and the old New York centrist establishment. There's a new era of politics underway in New York City. Zohran Mamdani is said to be a democratic socialist, just conducted a huge sort of stadium-sized rally with AOC and Bernie Sanders and that clique, and he will be mayor. And there's clearly been instructions handed down to every GOP influencer to make this race sort of test case for the national Democrats, to hope that it hurts the Democrats nationally in the upcoming midterms, and to also make it into a religious war and crank up the dial on Islamophobia to 11 to make this about Islam. And it's also a way of pivoting away from Israel and what Israel has done to just focusing on hating Muslims. And the meltdown just gets wilder and more rabid every day. And I think more revealing, to the point where it doesn't even matter what Mamdani represents. I'm just here for the meltdown.
I agree. Should we show the ad that Andrew Cuomo put together and then quickly deleted because it was just so blatantly racist? This comes from his campaign. They put together this AI ad against Mamdani, which they immediately deleted because
show it on like 1.25 speed.
I don't. Okay, let's
if you
see
can do
here.
that. Anyway, show.
Yeah. I can do that. It's quite something.
Yeah, there's a guy with a kufiya who's like a shoplifter. It doesn't quite work. There's a pimp for Mamdani.
Oh, sorry.
Mamdani isn't crazy.
He's just trying to even.
Zohran Mamdani's opponents want you to believe he's an inexperienced radical whose policies will make New York City more dangerous. But what do his actual supporters think?
Mamdani isn't crazy.
He's just trying to even the playing field.
You know, give everyone a fair shot. Sure, he said multiple times we need to defund the police, but that was just a metaphor.
And yes, he did say crime is a social construct, but that was also a metaphor.
His main backer, the Democratic Socialists' ideas are common sense, such as
decriminalizing misdemeanors, like shoplifting, third-degree assault, trespassing, prostitution,
and drunk driving.
With plans to decriminalize all drugs, Mamdani will be a job creator for drug dealers.
Instead of helping us homeless get off the streets and into the mental health facilities we need, he wants to give us safe injection sites to do crack and let us sleep in subway cars.
These are actual policies Mamdani and the DSA want to implement on day one.
When a woman's being domestically abused, she
Says the black guy in a keffiyeh to the camera. I think that's enough. Anyway, so they deleted that.
Well, then they all get let out of prison by Zohran in the end because they're all criminals for Mamdani. And I think that it was all deliberate. The deletion and everything was all calculated. And that Cuomo's objective was just to get this out there and get people talking. And by introducing it and deleting it, you get people talking. And it actually would have been an effective Willie Horton style ad if it had featured real actors, but being AI slop kind of made it more mockable. But then again, it couldn't have been, I don't think it could have been executed the same way.
Yeah, I mean,
because this is their strategy against Mamdani. It's all distilled perfectly right there. It's not like this was some off script bad apple operative who put this out there. Like, this is the script.
Yeah. Just straight up Islamophobia. And so let's look at some of the people freaking out. This is Ellie Kohanim. She's the former U.S. Deputy Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism. We all know
she worked under Mike Pompeo
to
attack Palestine solidarity activism.
Yeah, that's what that job entails. So here she is. So there's a photo of 9/11, the World Trade Center on fire. Never forget, early voting begins today. Vote Andrew Cuomo. So what? Like, Mamdani is responsible for 9/11, and there'll be another one if he is elected. And I thought Matt Lieb had a funny joke. He's a comedian, host a podcast, Bad Hasbara, with my brother, and he said this. I know you meant this to be racist against Mamdani, but this mostly reads like, vote Cuomo or else we'll do another 9/11.
Well, that's not a joke. I mean, that's what she's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll make that point later. I think, let's go through some of these takes.
Matt Walsh.
Yeah. The guy who could never exist without a beard. Like, if he shaved his beard, it would be like his whole image would be discredited.
So he shares some video of Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani's father, talking about the roots of the U.S., the colonial roots of the U.S.
Well, let's play that clip.
The clip, okay.
America is the genesis of what we call settler colonialism. And the American model was exported all around the world. Abraham Lincoln generalized the solution of reservations. They herded American Indians into separate territories. For the Nazis, this was the inspiration. Hitler realized two things. One, that genocide was doable. It is possible to do genocide. That's what Hitler realized. Second thing Hitler realized is that you don't have to have a common citizenship. You can differentiate between people. The Nuremberg laws were patterned after American laws. Anyway, the US put Indians in reservations. The US invented the model.
So what's wrong about that? It sounds exact. Anyway, so Matt Walsh goes ahead and says, in response to this clip, the entire Mamdani family should be expelled from the country. Ungrateful, anti-American parasites have no right to be here.
He's like, you're saying America inspired Nazism? Well, I'm an American Nazi. That's my response.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And if I shaved my beard, everyone would mock me even more than they currently do. But are we supposed to deny the Holocaust of American Indians? Is that what we have to do because it's critical race theory to talk about that taking place when America was in a straightforward settler colonial phase? I mean, what is wrong with what he said? And Adolf Hitler actually was personally interested in and inspired by stories of the American West and of the expulsion of Native Americans that were translated into German and were illustrated stories. As a young man, he was really captivated by these stories of the American West. This is well documented. The reservation system came into being under Lincoln. He was not the biggest fan of it, but it took place for sure. He had the first Native American chief of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and was more, I would say, progressive than most presidents of his time on the issue, but he still oversaw brutal oppression of Native Americans. That is obviously a sort of a tableau for Israeli settler colonialism. I don't know, I didn't see the whole address, but I mean, Hitler was also inspired by what Germany did in Namibia through its colonial project. But yeah, the US, that happened. So according to Matt Walsh, if your father presents critical, accurate history of the United States during the 19th century, your entire family should be deported. And this is their, again, this is the script. This is their campaign against Mamdani.
Yeah. And what is Matt Walsh's brand? It's mocking people, who are identitarian, who are triggered. He's all about mocking cancel culture, right? That's a big part of his whole brand. He's made documentaries about that, mocking the excesses of, the left in some ways. But here he is calling for someone to be deported because he doesn't like their accurate rendering of U.S. history. It's another example of these right-wing snowflakes who mock left-wing people, but exhibiting behavior that far surpasses any excesses that they make fun of.
Yeah, he did that film, What is a Woman, where he would ask like gender studies professors, what is a woman, and they couldn't answer the question.
Yeah, and he make fun of them for being triggered, right? And for but here he is triggered by Zohran Mamdani's father talking accurately about settler colonialism.
What is the First Amendment?
Should we go to Maria this one, it reads like a parody. This one is just unbelievable. She's a former New York Senate candidate. This is what she said. Every time I hear Mamdani's anti-Semitic base shouting, tax the rich, what I really think they're saying is tax the Jews. They're obsessed with bashing Israel. They're obsessed with bashing Israel and wealthy Jewish New Yorkers like Bill Ackman. Connect the dots. Governor Kathy Hochul going along with this is repulsive. Having Jewish Bernie Sanders there for cover redefines the phrase useful idiots. The whole thing gives me the creeps. Vote Andrew Cuomo. let's send the message that hate has no place in New York City. I mean, look, I don't know I don't know how influential she is, so maybe we're really punching down here, but like, it's just so on the. It's kind of like Mark Levin complaining that every time he hears people calling out the neocons, he really means that they really mean the Jews. And this is a similar thing. Tax the rich means tax the Jews.
During the financial crash, there were, I remember seeing complaints that, if you talk too much about Goldman Sachs, you're actually being anti-Semitic. I mean, it's Goldman and Sachs; those are Jewish names. And calling it like a vampire squid fish on the face of humanity is anti-Semitic. So fight hate, don't criticize the rich, fight anti-Semitism. Bill Ackman is Jews. All Jews are Bill Ackman. That's what she's saying. And what is Bill Ackman saying? I mean, he's had some incredible takes. Bill Ackman, by the way, is at the center of this. Like, I really can't ignore the fact that so many of the influencers I see with cheap takes on Mamdani and stunts and interviewing people in the streets in New York were at the Hamptons Influencer Summit that Bill Ackman hosted with the late Charlie Kirk back in early August. And they were already workshopping a potential Mamdani victory and how they were going to deal with it. And so much of this is being run through Andrew Cuomo's personal social media accounts as well. He's pumping this out. So Bill Ackman's at the center of this, and he's presented an interesting binary here.
Argentina rejects socialism while New York City embraces it. The world is upside down. Let's stop it in New York City before it's too late. So what is he referring to? The fact that President Milei in Argentina, his party just made some gains in parliamentary elections, but that was after Trump basically told Argentina, if you don't vote for Milei, you're going to suffer, and we're not going to give you a bailout. And
straight up foreign election interference. And what is Milei if not one of the worst political failures of the 21st century, who's just like sent the peso crashing to the ground, imposed austerity policies that are supposed to, destroy the government beast and usher in free markets, which wound up causing massive unemployment, protests, hunger. And requiring a $40 million bailout. At least $20 billion is coming from the U.S. taxpayer. And who's being bailed out? It's not the Argentine people. It's the bondholders. Bill Ackman's billionaire buddies like Rob Citron, who's friends with Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who holds so much of Argentina's bonds. We're paying a bunch of billionaires and paying to keep Milei in power as U.S. taxpayers. Is that what MAGA was about? Is this America first? Is this libertarianism? Are these the libertarian principles? Javier Milei's entire economic policy, his whole monetary policy, has depended on U.S. dollars artificially propping up the Argentine peso, in complete contravention of his entire explicitly stated chainsaw-oriented economic philosophy, which opposes foreign economic intervention. And he's just relying on his financial feeding tube to the U.S. So, this is what Bill Ackman is presenting as the alternative to the socialist hell of New York City, which doesn't require any bailouts, and which actually the New York taxpayers are actually subsidizing the red states, which are always in the red.
And if you look at Mamdani's policies, they're pretty modest. He wants to have like one government subsidized grocery store in like every borough, which is like, a pretty modest venture. And also he wants to have subsidized buses for people who can't afford to take the bus. I mean, like this
Free
idea.
buses. I mean, they almost did that in DC without any controversy. I mean, it's not really going to do much, but he's pushing affordability because it's impossible to live in Manhattan unless you're Bill Ackman and you have a $53 million penthouse apartment.
Exactly. And that's why they hate him, is because he speaks to that. He actually talks about working people and trying to make this a city that can be affordable for them to live in. And the Bill Ackmans of the world can't stand that. It's not just about Israel. I mean, yes, they despise the fact that he sees Palestinians as equal human beings, and he won't kiss the ring to Israel. And they're infuriated by that. And they're infuriated that that speaks to now most of the voters who are also fed up with Israel. And it's no longer the days of Jesse Jackson when, like Jesse Jackson was caught off mic calling New York Hymietown, and he had to spend, the rest of his political career basically apologizing for that. He never lived that down.
Yeah.
It's no longer Hymietown, and that's it's a wonderful thing. And we're gonna have a Muslim mayor of Hymietown. It's great to see. It's exciting, and that's why they're. But this goes way beyond Israel.
Well, there was when Harold Washington ran for mayor of Chicago as running to be the first black mayor. There were buttons distributed that Jews in Chicago would wear. I mean, Israel wasn't an issue then, but it wasn't like he wasn't making it an issue. But they said Hymies for Harold. They should have Hymies for Zohran buttons, because a lot of Jews are supporting him, because most Jews don't vote on Israel. It's the loudest, richest, slimiest, most satanic ones who do the Bill Ackmans.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who have the megaphone that are paying the 7K cartel $7,000 a post for these trashy influencer posts. They get ratioed left and right. They're the ones filling up the internet with Hasbara, but it doesn't mean that they're the ones who are going to dictate the Jewish vote. Sorry. You don't control New York anymore.
Here's one $7,000 per post influencer, Allie Beth Stuckey. I asked my 840,000 Instagram followers, mostly Christian women, what their biggest concern is for the country right now. And by far the most common answer is the growing influence of Islam. I'd like to see this concern reflected in the Republican Party ASAP.
Yeah. Well, they're doing that. They're reflecting this kitchen table concern that really relates to the issues that I hear on Main Street USA when I go out there. And I mean, I only talk to taxi drivers like Thomas Friedman, so I wouldn't know. Actually, if I did and I just talked to Uber drivers, I'd hear that everything is unaffordable. Yeah. What most Americans care about right now is food prices through the roof. If you go to some restaurants in the DC area, they hit you with a 5% surcharge because food for restaurants is so expensive that they have to sneak it in at the end. And then when you complain, they'll point you to the fine print. Nothing's affordable right now. Yeah. And that's why Americans want to talk about Islam.
And meanwhile, SNAP benefits, meanwhile, for millions of people are running out because of the government shutdown and because of Trump's cuts to the program. So in the coming weeks, unless the government shutdown is resolved, millions of people are not going to get their SNAP benefits, which is what people rely on to survive. And meanwhile, we're shoveling money out the door to bail out Argentina, on top of all the money given to Israel and all the money now devoted to a regime change project.
The deficit is through the roof.
Yeah.
It's a completely artificially propped up economy. A billionaire, Timothy Mellon, billionaire to the Mellon oil fortune, is contributing $150 million to pay for troops, to pay for the military during the shutdown, which is a backdoor bribe to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who contributed to Trump and RFK's campaigns. So the whole plutocracy is plain for everyone to see right now. And that's why we need to talk about Islam. It's the ultimate diversion. But I want to, and it really feels like 2012. Like Obama was running for re-election. There was this Islamic Community Center, park, what was it called? Like Park 51. I can't remember. It's been so long. That was being built in downtown New York. It happened to be like several blocks from Ground Zero. So many of the same forces that are ginning up this latest phase of Islamophobia decided to kind of weaponize the Islamic Community Center and transformed it into a national issue. And actually, they managed to stop it. And Obama was put on the spot. Obama has some sort of vague Muslim roots, has Muslim family members. They thought it would harm Obama. It was one of their attempts to defeat Obama because he was running against an extremely weak opponent. It didn't work. But Obama never pushed back against it. Zohran Mamdani is pushing back. He's sort of taking this fight on. I don't know if he's taking on the Israel fight, but he's given a speech about Islamophobia. J.D. Vance has mocked him for it. J.D. Vance is really, Marco Rubio basically takes over the Trump administration. J.D. Vance is playing the role of chief troll and driving this Islamophobic campaign. And are we to forget? He's mocking him and saying, you think your aunt who suffered Islamophobia after 9/11 was the real victim of 9/11? Like, no one's saying that. But are we supposed to forget about the way 9/11 was exploited to take away our rights, to ram through the Patriot Act, to declare an AUMF that hasn't been sunsetted, to launch a series of wars that killed millions, destroyed entire swaths of the Middle East and Central Asia? Yeah, that's what he wants. J.D. Vance wants us to forget about that. And the fact that people who just happen to look Muslim were killed in the streets in the U.S. Sikhs, people who look like Usha Vance were killed in the streets in the U.S.
And also rounded up and arrested, even though no one was ever charged with a single crime. There was hundreds of people rounded up and arrested just for looking Muslim after 9/11 under the FBI of Robert Mueller.
That was one of the worst times in the U.S. That's why I got into journalism. Like, it was a really radicalizing experience. And they want us to go back to that for the most cynical reasons. And so I don't think they're going to just walk away from this fight and play politics as usual, New York politics as usual with Mamdani. He has to fail.
Yes.
He must fail. Because as George Will, the Washington Post conservative columnist, who sort of represents like national mainstream republicanism, said Mamdani should be elected so we can make an example of him to show that socialism doesn't work. All right, he's not going to do socialism. Yeah, as you said, Aaron, he's going to do a few measures for affordability, and but they're not going to let him succeed.
Look, it mirrors U.S. foreign policy, right? Yep. We were talking earlier in the stream about Venezuela and the sanctions on Venezuela, which are designed to destroy the economy. There's that State Department cable about Cuba right after Fidel Castro takes power. And they point out that the U.S. has a problem because the majority of Cubans actually support Castro and there's no real political opposition. So what do they say? I'm going to quote it. It follows that every possible means should be undertaken promptly to weaken the economic life of Cuba. We need to, and it goes on, we need to make the greatest inroads in denying money and supplies to Cuba, to decrease monetary and real wages, and bring about hunger, desperation, and the overthrow of the government. Now, obviously, they can't do exactly that same playbook in New York City, but Trump has already talked about, if Zohran Mamdani is elected and he doesn't play ball, we can withhold state funding. So yes, they will do whatever they can with their means, and they have a lot of means, not just through the government, but through private power, through corporations, to make life difficult for average people. And that's exactly what they'll do within what's possible, without being too over the top about it, to Zohran Mamdani's New York City.
I think they're going to go further than that. I think we need to go back to the tweet by Eli Kohanim,
the former deputy envoy for combating anti-Semitism, where she threatens a new 9/11. Okay.
Deputy envoy for creating anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Think about in the last 2 years how many fake staged anti-Semitic incidents we've had. in order to dramatize what right-wing Zionists want everyone to believe is taking place. The Jews are facing persecution and a new pogrom. They will fabricate anti-Semitic incidents in New York at a baseline. That's sort of the baseline for what they'll do. But she seems to be threatening some sort of terrorist attacks inside New York. Think about all the terrorist plots that the FBI supposedly disrupted during the Obama era. The FBI created almost every single one of those plots. Almost every single one. The FBI is now controlled by Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. You don't think they're going to try to get up to some mischief in New York? In addition to Trump possibly sending in federal troops to provoke New Yorkers and provoke and create friction with the NYPD. The NYPD is a state within a state. It's larger than most foreign militaries in the world. And the NYPD helped destroy the mayoral tenure of Bill de Blasio during the early phases of BLM, refusing to patrol, especially in further boroughs, basically fueling crime. The NYPD could do that again, which is why I think Zohran Mamdani had to keep on Jessica Tisch, or felt he had to keep on Jessica Tisch. I think this was like kind of a pathetic concession. Jessica Tisch being the pro-Israel, openly Zionist NYPD commissioner who is essentially his political enemy and was an enemy of anyone who came out and protested against the genocide in New York, especially at Columbia University. I mean, this is like, Arbenz coming into to the presidency in Guatemala and not purging the military, and they wound up taking him out. But what would happen if he removed Jessica Tisch right now? I mean, it could set the stage for something more immediately worse. Yeah. But I mean, another example I'd point to is Australia. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese criticizes Netanyahu, starts criticizing Israeli conduct in Gaza. Next thing you know, there are arson attacks on synagogues. There's this giant wave of supposed anti-Semitic violence across Australia. And then it turns out, as Australian state security determines, that these are not attacks being conducted by ideologically motivated Australian citizens, by Nazis who hate Jews. They're being conducted by people with no politics, who are part of a criminal underclass, some of them who have mental health disorders, who are being paid from abroad in crypto with instructions from some foreign intelligence agency. And then at the end of it all, Albanese can't call out the real culprit that would actually have benefited from these attacks, and has to expel the Iranian ambassador with no evidence that it was Iran. And who provided the intelligence that Iran supposedly was behind it? Israel, the one country that would have benefited from this. And guess what Israel just did this week? I should pull this up, actually, just in case no one believes me. It's like right there in front of our faces in the New York Post. Israel is interfering directly in this election. Here it is. I got it. They're interfering directly in the most bizarre and stupid way. This is from the New York Post. Basically, the New York Post is sourcing a Foreign Intelligence Service report about Linda Sarsour, who ran a nonprofit activist organization down in Bay Ridge in Brooklyn and is a longtime ally of Zohran Mamdani. There's no dispute about that. It's been on the record for years. Neither of them would deny that. But the New York Post is citing a Foreign Intelligence Service report that Linda Sarsour mentored Zohran Mamdani. I mean, what country would that be? Is it Liechtenstein?
I mean, Linda Sarsour has long been a target of the New York Post and other right-wing outlets because she's like a politically active Muslim Palestinian woman, wears hijab. They love to attack her. And yeah, now they're relying on Israeli so-called intelligence to target her. And it's
Israel's directly interfering in this.
That's foreign
race,
interference. Yeah.
and they're not going to stop. So, I mean, get ready for the false flags. Get ready for the manufactured terror plots. Get ready for the bogus staged anti-Semitic incidents, because they're not going to let this go. And Zohran Mamdani better not pull a Jeremy Corbyn and just let it happen and stand down. He needs to take on this fight and recognize that there is an entire base of New Yorkers that are sick of it.
Yeah. Including a lot of Jewish New Yorkers who have his back.
Yes.
And and listen, just not that we need any more reminders of how dumb Russiagate was, but I hope especially now that people hearing Trump go before the Israeli parliament and brag about how he does the bidding of Miriam Adelson, how she's Israel first, she is more loyal to Israel than the U.S. The New York Post relying on Israel to smear a New York City candidate for mayor. It just underscores how all this fear-mongering about Russian influence, Russian interference was just all the more of a joke, given the open acceptance and embrace of Israeli interference constantly in our politics. And that is only going to get worse under Mayor Zohran Mamdani.
Or Liechtensteinian interference. Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
Swaziland. What are we going to do about that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Will this be our last stream before the mayoral election, November 4th?
Yep.
So what is today? It could be our last stream before the communist jihad takeover, like the Islamo-Maoist takeover of New York. Just a few quick announcements before we go. I have a new documentary out that I'm sure many of you have already know about or have seen, called Uncaptured, about Jewish life inside Iran. While I was in Iran in May, we started filming on this with an Iranian documentarian filmmaker named Maria Mavati. And you'll see some of the interviews I conducted with Iranian Jewish communal leaders and some of the places I went and some of the Jewish holy sites inside Iran. And, I presented in these interviews the criticisms from the outside that the Jewish community gets there because they are officially non or anti-Zionist and vocally protested the genocide in Gaza. And watch it and see for yourself and judge for yourself if they're authentic or not. But I think what I saw there presented such a strong contrast with the kind of insanity that we see on display in New York or across the US and have seen for the last 2 years. Something much more authentic and stoic and sober and sane, and is really a repudiation of the captive Judaism that is preached by Zionists. So watch that and let us know what you think. And the second announcement is that we finally have been suspended from PayPal for existing. We were told that this would happen eventually, and we had to get out of there. Wyatt Reed, our colleague, editor at the Grayzone, has been totally debanked from PayPal and I think Venmo for reasons unknown. So they do that. Actually, I tried to send a payment to Oscar Leon, our editor, like he's our video editor and does a lot of documentary work for us and was working with me on this Iran doc. And I tried to send him a payment for his work on it. And I wrote in the notes, Iran documentary, and PayPal blocked that payment simply because it said Iran.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's a no-no. You can't mention a bad guy country.
Yeah.
That's been the case for a long time. Same with Gaza, obviously. Yeah. So Grayzone's account, so on PayPal, what did they tell you as the reason why you were banned?
Well, I figured out why. They're asking me to explain two transactions, two donations totaling $40. These are all very small donations from people around the world, from someone named Nasrallah Abbasi, Iranian name. Was he a high-level IRGC operative secretly funding us through Iran? Well, I spoke to him today by phone. He's based in Sydney, Australia. He is about to retire, left Iran in 1982, was an Iranian leftist. You know, the leftists in Iran faced persecution after the revolution in 79.
Yeah.
And I said, why are you supporting the Grayzone? And he said, because you're one of the few people, you're some of the few people who haven't sold your soul to the devil. And he's outraged by the Gaza genocide. And he's a huge fan of Aaron Mate and Katie Halper as well. And he's just a guy like the rest of you. Great guy. I love this guy. We had a great conversation. I recorded it. I'm going to publish parts of it just to show how absurd PayPal is. I have to explain these transactions. Then I have to provide all sorts of authentication to prove that our business is legitimate. They're asking for tax forms, and they're holding hostage the money that has been donated, and they're just going to steal it if I don't provide that to them. So PayPal is evil. We're going to replace them this week with a less evil platform. We're going to do a fall fundraiser, and it's going to support our work, and it's going to support getting equipment for the newest member of our team, Kay Pritzker, who is an extremely talented journalist, videographer, who's just joined us, is helping us step up our social media game, is going to be doing field work with us. He did the documentary, The Encampments, which is worth watching. And we'll be doing a fall fundraiser soon through a new service, which is not evil like PayPal and is not controlled by Zionist Big Brother.
And this follows the GoFundMe also doing the same thing to the Grayzone. When you did a fundraiser, GoFundMe refused to release the funds. You raised a lot of money for the Grayzone journalism, which GoFundMe just basically kept. So this is so PayPal is the latest financial giant to essentially deplatform the Grayzone.
Yeah, they had to return the money after we shamed them into. Yeah. I mean, they would have just kept it. It would have been straight up theft. By the way, Coinbase is doing the same thing to me, but it would just take too long to explain the amount of theft that's going on. So that'll be for another. I'll just save it. I've been dealing with them for months. These are all like evil companies that can completely debank us for political reasons. And I think we need to start thinking about ways to be truly financially independent. But for now, we want to make it possible for you to continue to support our work and to support the newest member of our team. So stay tuned for that announcement later this week. Aaron, anything you want to add?
Well, I wonder if that Washington Post reporter who attacked the Grayzone with that article that they had to correct because it was so malicious.
They basically retracted most of it.
They had to issue a very long correction at the top. But of course, people still, like when people are trying to dismiss us and deplatform us, they still spread the original screenshot as if it's like legit. What's his name? Joseph Mendelson, was that his name?
Joseph Men. I call him Joseph Mengele.
Mengele, exactly, yeah. So he must be excited at this news that an Iranian guy gave money to the Grayzone.
Well, I'll tell you one thing he told me. And again, I'm going to release the video. He's such a charming person. I really felt a strong kinship talking with him. He told me that his wife went to a Shia community center in Sydney. His wife, who has no political, she's not a political activist. She went and was stopped by the police, and they grilled her and asked her why she was going in there and presented her with surveillance photos of herself going in and out. So it's possible the Australian state flagged him I mean, look at what Australia is doing to so many of its citizens. It is one of the most oppressive authoritarian states within the Five Eyes. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is why. Again, he donated $40 to us. He's a retiree in Sydney, Australia. That's the world we're living in. I mean, and we will be living in it increasingly because independent media is getting too strong. It's getting too powerful. They need to force people to watch ZBS, Paramount's ZBS. No one wants to watch it. No one believes it anymore. And remember all the positions we've taken that we got attacked for, that you got the finger for? Like no one on the left would attack us for that now.
Oh, of course not. No. I think people on the right have a hard time with us because we also but because we also called out Russiagate. We were one of the few leftist outlets that actually actively waged an all-out assault on Russiagate because it was just such a scam. And I think that makes it difficult for people on the right who otherwise would want to dismiss us and want to, banish us to do that because we were one of the few to call that out. At least I like to think that. Yeah, we don't fit in any category. We're not partisan hacks. And for people who still care about actual journalism, we'll always be here doing that.
Right on. Well, this is a great stream. Again, if there's anything you want to add before we go.
No, this is a great show. I hope we do it again soon.
Me too. Well, I'm just getting used to my new situation in the studio. So thank you all for bearing with me. And subscribe, support however you can. We'll be working on giving you more options for doing that in the coming days. Like this stream, and we're getting very close to 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. I remember when we started just a few years ago, we've been facing harsh suppression ever since March 2020. I don't know what happened then. But we're still pushing forward to 500,000, which means that according to the Free Press valuation, we're worth, I don't know, $190 million. If any Zionist billionaire wants to buy us, talk to me. Unilever, you want to buy our company? All right. Well, that's all for this week. We'll be back here soon. Peace.
Peace.